It is an honor and a privilege to be here with you, Deena. Thank you. Meeting you has definitely changed my life for the better, and I'm very grateful for that.
I love what you're doing. I love the platform. I'm a fan of your social media, and I think you're doing really important work around many things, right? I mean, around domestic abuse, divorce, life changes, and even touching on stories of recovery.
But thank you, Dana. I think you do an amazing job from what I've seen, and I've watched a few of your podcasts, and I've done a lot of podcasts and that, and you let people just talk. It flows out of them.
Welcome to the Life Changes Channel podcast. We're here with Justin Hendriks, and I am really excited to introduce you to this guy. He's really cool. He also is different than your expected stereotypical mediator. And as you can see, if you're watching on the video, he has Fair Play Mediation, and that he's got his logo there behind him. Thank you for being with us today, Justin. I'm really interested to learn more while we talk, but also for the audience to be able to get to know who you are and what makes you different. What is your why? Tell us. Just let's dig right in and tell us who you are.
Great. Well, thanks for having me. First of all, Deena, no pressure to kind of follow that introduction whatsoever. So I appreciate that. Yeah, I founded Fair Play Mediation about a year ago after really going through the ringer, facing some life challenges myself, definitely, and experiencing that evolution and coming out of that experience or several experiences, really recognizing how trauma can reshape and redefine us and how it helps to have guidance and perspective along the way, really, whether that's from trusted friends or family members or professionals. Really, you need a network, because you've heard the expression, it takes a village to raise a child. I think it also takes a village to work through stress and trauma and challenging times, and we need support as humans. So that led me becoming a mediator and pursuing that goal, and taking a number of courses and doing the training around that and learning more about how to guide others through trauma or conflict. 90% of what I do is family related or parenting related. That's just the reality that's of where folks are requiring a little bit more guidance and mediation these days. But it's also an area that's near and dear to me after having been through a fairly tumultuous divorce and sort of co-parenting relationship myself, and having to navigate that and focus on what's going to be best objectively for the kids while I heal as well. Because it's not just you as a parent in those situations, of course, you've got little people to worry about as well. And they are just the most important to prioritize during that difficult time. So having been there myself, I'm a down to earth regular guy. I pride myself on taking those conversations on and helping people figure out solutions that are going to work for them ultimately, because everybody's different.
I had fun digging into your social media because you mentioned about how you are different. You have a different approach maybe than others have come to expect from divorce professionals or even mediation professionals. And you have an approach that is fun, and you have some character in there and some personality, and I feel like that's how you meet your clients as well. Would you say that's accurate?
Yeah, that's definitely true. And I think, like with a lot of other professionals that you might work with, um, I wouldn't expect myself to be a fit for anybody. Just like you might go and see a therapist and they're not a fit for you, or you might go and meet with a financial planner and you don't align on some of your goals. You just don't jive. So I pride myself, yeah, on being a little bit different. Some might even say quirky, and and that's where I really thrive. That's where I help people have those difficult conversations, and uncover really what's at the root of a lot of issues by just being normal, being approachable, being real, and being able to relate to a lot of what they've been through.
Well, and people see through when a person presents themselves in a way that isn't authentic. And so it really undermines their trust in that relationship. So when you
Mhm.
show up as Justin and you own your quirky, then I think that is really strongly related to the trust that they can have in you, and they know that they can have conversations that or ask questions that maybe they would hesitate to ask someone who they don't align with, like you say, they don't jive with, and they maybe feel like, well, I have to be very, professional and polished, and I have to edit my conversation. I'm really afraid to ask something that maybe will sound, um, you know, silly, or people hesitate to dive into some of the topics that are very important to them. And so I think having that comfort level with you, if that is a fit, and that's just amazing to build that relationship on. And it's also reassuring that they realize it's okay if I haven't aligned with someone. So if somebody's listening and they're like, I don't really feel like I align, and Justin just, oh, he just named that, he just called that out, that happens, and it's okay. It isn't, everyone isn't created the same. Their background coming into it is different.
Mhm.
You've said, your personal experience is what got you interested in doing this, and that is your contribution as well to the conversations, is that experience of kind of like, hey, I've been there.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I'm asking folks to come in and meet me and have a conversation that's incredibly vulnerable and incredibly open and can be raw or emotional at times.
Mhm.
So if I was to approach that like a robot or somebody reading a script that is indifferent to the outcome or thinks in terms of black and white, I don't think I'm really doing those people sharing their stories with me justice, or opening up about the unique challenges that they're facing and exploring those solutions together, right? And finding out what's going to work for them, because everybody's so unique and individual. And I want them to be genuine and open with me when they come in. So I really, that's the least I can do, is be the same with them.
That's amazing. Now, I'm curious about the name of your company. How did you land on Fair Play?
Um, I don't know if you're familiar with Chris Voss, the negotiator.
Okay, I've heard
He
the
wrote
name.
Never Split the Difference.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
fascinating guy, but he
I
often
have the
refers,
book. I just haven't cracked it open. Yeah.
crack it. You won't be able to put it down. Yeah,
Okay.
he's got some great stories in there as well. But I really appreciate one of his segments where we get so hyper fixated on fair, and he refers to it as the F word.
Oh,
Um,
also
fair. People
four
get
letter.
fixated. I just want what's fair. Deena, I just want what's fair. So by implication, you're being unfair in what you're proposing or what you're suggesting. So that kind of made me chuckle. So in combining that with play and the concept of play, which really takes me back to childhood, or watching my own kids and how they interact in the world, it's like there's more than one way to do things so that they actually turn out to be fair. You can approach things with an open mind and an open heart, and listen to other people, and you kind of lose sight of what in black and white terms is fair. Because when it comes to mediation or negotiation or anything that's really relationship focused, which is what mediation is at its core, it's recognizing the other person, empathizing with them, and then figuring out the solution that's going to work for both parties, multiple parties, whatever. It's not in black and white terms. So we can throw the term fair around, but what is objectively fair isn't always going to feel fair to everybody involved. So let's get in there. Let's play around with solutions and determine what's going to work best for everybody. And that's where I came up with it ultimately.
I like that. Even the emblem that you have with, there's a very gentle flow to this, and it's intertwined. So to me, that represents people working together and having this be as smooth as possible, and to flow towards more positive outcomes. And beyond, so you work with people who are parents, primarily,
Mhm.
it sounds like, and children are involved. That is probably going to be an ongoing relationship even beyond the divorce, would you say?
100%. Yeah. Yeah. That's one that will continue really until you die in one capacity or another. You know, um,
I mean, more the
the-
relationship with the mediator.
oh, with the mediator, I was thinking with
Yes.
with the
Well,
co-parent there.
actually, yes, I'm happy
Um,
you clarified that, because it is,
yeah.
even when they're adults, it can be necessary if at times.
Mhm. Absolutely. And I do have clients that have come back to me, um, 6, 12 months later and said, hey, we've got, another issue that we want to discuss. We're good on 99% of stuff, but there's still this hiccup, this underlying tension around this one thing. Can you help us navigate that? And I'm always impressed with those clients in particular at how evolved their relationship is, how they've managed to move from a place of more tension, certainly to less. And that's not to say that particularly divorced couples or co-parents have to be best friends. That's not the expectation, but there should be an expectation of mutual respect, or at least that's the ultimate goal, and being able to have those open conversations and communication. So having said all that, they've actually managed to navigate 99% of this challenge on their own. What they're coming to me with is like this 1% where we don't want to damage and fracture the relationship that we've worked hard to build or to evolve to, if you like. Can you help us with this one piece again? And I'll say, sure. Like, how long do you need? Let's meet up again. Is your house good, or do you want to go to second cup again?
Nice.
Yeah.
And I think it's important to know that they've got that ongoing support if they do need to negotiate, have someone help them negotiate something.
Mm-hmm.
And they're learning those skills as well. And when they've worked with you through their divorce or their separation, do you think that overall they usually come out with better, there's less drama involved, and they're set up for a better future of communication and a better outcome that is going to be better than like all the drama, try and build a mutually respectful relationship after that?
I think that part's challenging. And
Mm.
I'm thinking about this. I'm like about to talk myself out of business, but it's kind of funny. So like, I'm not a magician, right? At the end of the day, mediators, even the good ones, are not magicians. Ultimately, it comes down to the parties involved. They're the ones having the discussion. The mediators can provide the framework
Mhm.
and a safe environment to have that conversation, but really they don't own that discussion in the same way that the parties do. So for mediation to work, the individuals involved really have to have a commitment to that journey and that process and the end goal of what do we both want this to look like, or what do I want this to look like in 6 to 12 to 18 months from now. Because the hardest part for me is getting people out of that fight or flight, out of
Mm.
lizard brain,
Yeah.
and thinking with the objective part of their brain, because it's so easy for us as humans to be like, you hurt me in the past, this was my lived experience before, I'm not going there again, so I'm going to dig my heels in and think about things from a very kind of blinkered perspective. Whereas if you can open that up and really commit to the process of at least having a conversation with the other person, trying to empathize, and I often tell clients that understanding is not the same as agreeing. So I
Mhm.
can acknowledge where Dean is coming from, but I might have a completely different viewpoint. Then there's hope. Then there's hope, and you can draw a line under whatever's happened before and start fresh. Say, this is where we want to move to, and this is where we want to be 12 to 18 months from now. And sometimes when people have an emotional response, when I'm meeting with them, I ask them to imagine where they'd like to be and remind them that I wish I could take their feelings, their experience, their emotions, all that wisdom that they've gathered 18 months from now, and put that back into their mind and body and soul in that moment. Because when it's raw and it's fresh and people are actually seeking out mediation, thinking that it's going to be an immediate solution, that's where it can be challenging, because it does take time to rebuild and kind of find your footing again. So
Well,
guiding them down that path I can do, but ultimately it's going to be up to those folks themselves to have a productive conversation and commit to the process.
that's a really valid point to make. And just to,
That's the brutally honest point to make.
yes, yes. And just as a reminder, but it's so important that you do serve that role, to be there just to point that out. Okay, our focus is really to get you to, what do you want 6, 12, 18 months, 2 years, whatever, down the road. And do you think this is serving you to reach that goal right now, the way that, you've dug your heels in? And really are maybe being a stickler on certain things that could just take a breath and think about this empathy that you talk about. You know, what does the other person want from it? Maybe you're fighting on two things that you both can have, but you've just not considered that the part they want isn't the part you want, and you can actually you can be happy once you just take the fight out of it and think about that empathy piece. And that can be really hard when you're angry with someone and hating on them and just wanting to fight, and I don't want to think about what they want, right? So how do you help people through that? Like, do you have anything that people could take away from this conversation you and I are having that they could use right now in their home or in those conversations that could help set up that change in the way they approach?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I suppose one thing I would say is relationships are the only thing that's really permanent in this world. You've heard people say it's the only thing you really leave behind, how you made others feel about you.
Yes,
So,
yes.
and you're not going to feel positive about everybody all the time or permanently, or that's just life. But I would say approach each interaction and relationship with a sense of curiosity. You don't have to agree, like I said before, with the other person, but you have a sense of curiosity and you want to investigate or examine why maybe they feel the way they do. And that'll help build understanding. And before you know it, conversation will flow and you can build a better understanding of what their needs are and why they feel the way they do. And that'll help you come at things from a more compassionate lens, really, and afford more kindness than maybe you thought was possible originally.
Well, you're using two of my most favorite words, curiosity and compassion. And community is another one, connection,
Mm-hmm.
conversation, all those things. And I agree with you 1,000,000% that curiosity, even if you initially are curious in a I'm gonna find out way, like I'm gonna get to, with maybe the motive isn't necessarily in a positive sense, but you can't help but, if you are curious and you challenge your assumptions about what you think the other person's wants and needs and their motives are, but actually genuinely curious, you're right. It's going to open those conversations. You can't help but learn some compassion. And then as you are curious, you hopefully instill that curiosity in them. And they're like,
Mm-hmm.
well, what about you? And then this can be a two-way street.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And that's really where you have those opportunities for growth, that you'll experience those aha moments, because we've all had those days where we're thinking, what the hell is wrong with them? What is their problem?
Yeah.
Ask them.
Yeah, exactly.
Why are you having this reaction uh, to this interaction or this one particular topic, right? Stay
Well, and
curious.
I think it gives that person the opportunity, the one you ask, why are you having that, to pause and ask themselves, because it can be so reflexive and this reaction just happens, it's habitual.
Mhm.
And when you ask, well, how come this pushed your buttons? And they can be, when they take when they take a moment, it's like,
Yeah.
well, it's
Or
because I
why did this
thought,
push my buttons?
yes,
Right.
yes, exactly. You have a very holistic approach. Can you tell us more about how you help people in this
Mm.
more of a holistic way?
Yeah, I think that's probably just who I am as a person. Um, I'm definitely not going to be your stuffy tweed wearing dude behind a mahogany desk. I'd much rather prefer to approach things in a more natural way, whether that's conversations or relationships or discussions around trauma, which is important to me, but that's not a huge part of mediation. Because I think that we're spiritual beings at our core, and by really nurturing our inner spirit and who we are as people, we can uncover a lot of solutions and a lot of patience, a lot of compassion, another word for you, towards other people as well, by really listening to those inner voices and addressing those, and doing that in a more natural way, which for me comes out in communication and storytelling and sharing and building that relationship and that rapport. So I would say that's my version of my holistic approach.
I think that's so important because I people hear me say it all the time. They probably get tired of it, but things are not always as they appear, and everyone has a story. And even somebody that you have been in a relationship with has stories you maybe haven't heard, or stories that they're telling themselves about the situation you're in now. And if
Mm-hmm.
they can share that and you're like, oh, no, 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 that's not how I meant it, or um, I'm sorry that came across that way, or maybe you can help them with the story that they share about what they're experiencing and how they've put you in that in a role, or how you've played in that story, and you don't know. Maybe there's something that they are experiencing now that's brought up something from the past that you don't realize, and as they share that, those stories can really help build that empathy.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And you've struck on an interesting point here, but within the mediation world, we would refer to that as a diamond. So you might trip over this story or underlying principle, or deeply held personal belief, that when you dig into it and uncover it a little bit more, you can see how it's tied back to a lot of the other challenges, communication issues, relationship issues, those other bumps in the roads that you can experience in interacting with others. And if you can uncover that diamond, you're like, that's kind of your aha moment. You're like, I'm going to latch onto this and we're going to talk about that and unpack that to discover how best we can actually help each other moving forward.
Well, and if at the point that they're talking to you, they are at an irreconcilable point in this relationship, there's still an opportunity to create that empathy and better communication that maybe they can't go back into, say, the marriage, but moving forward, they have a better understanding of this person that they're co-parenting with, and and that again, that compassion around the experiences that maybe broke, helped with the breakdown of that marriage, or I could say contributed, not helped, that's more positive, but
Yeah.
contributed to the breakdown. And again, it's maybe too late to save that relationship, but moving forward, they understand maybe a little more, with some more kindness and compassion about that person's um, personality and their character, and they then can parent better together and set a better example moving forward for how communication can happen for two people, and their children witness that.
Yeah. And digging into the whole relationship aspect or the breakdown of relationships, nobody ever gets married or into a serious committed relationship thinking that it will one day fall apart, or we would never do it, or lawyers would make a killing on prenups. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
But you don't think that that's going to happen. And I think it's really easy to get into that fight or flight and just focus on the negatives, and say, this person's going to pay, or it was awful, or like the whole relationship was crappy. That's not the truth. There were a lot of good times as well. You had very strong, loving feelings for this person at one point in time. And I think it really softens your heart when you can have that shift in perspective and say, this is a person that I certainly once really loved and cared for and would have jumped in front of a train for. That our relationship is now either evolved or we're starting a new relationship that is different. What is that going to look like? I don't have to hate this person. My previous experiences with them were, let's be conservative and say maybe 60% good, or 95% good. And there are a lot of valuable memories there as well. So just because your relationship has to change, or you have to start a new one that looks different than before, it doesn't mean you can't have respect, empathy, understanding, and patience with that person as well.
Justin, do you have some tips or guidance around co-parenting that you could share with the audience?
Yeah, when it comes to co-parenting, my biggest piece of advice is respond, don't react. So whether that's an in-person reaction or text message or an email, is if things have been, we'll call them choppy in the past in your relationship and your co-parenting relationship, it's all too easy to just like that looks awful, but sort of like spit out whatever comes to mind, right? Like you're feeling angry, like F you, I'm gonna lash out back. That's gonna be counterproductive. Just take the time to really think about the underlying message or that diamond if you can find it and figure it out yourself, and respond to that person in a caring, compassionate way. Or if you can manage that, at least in what I would call a professional way. And sometimes I'll use that term with my clients as well, professional co-parents.
Oh, I like that.
And even if you break it down into those terms, a professional wouldn't say something bad about the other party. A professional is going to prioritize the needs of their customers, clients, stakeholders, your kids, if you like, and take care of those needs first without responding emotionally and putting themselves and their professional relationship at risk, because that does long-term damage. So the short answer to your question is respond. Think about how you want to respond and approach it that way.
I like the differentiation between reaction and response. Reaction does really feel like a knee-jerk habit, like a reflex, and respond is something, it feels like that's a muscle you can build, because as you pause and consider the respond, the more often you do that, you're more likely to respond instead of react. And what comes to mind as well is if you react, you risk causing a negative reaction in that person who's just received the message. And that's going to ripple out long term, short term, long term, but it can affect your children if they happen to be with that person at the time, or it will, affect that whole you'll undermine the relationship that you have. And it can be once, just a one off, and it can do a lot of damage.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And that's a really good point, because kids are resilient, but they also don't know what they're witnessing a lot of the time, or they don't have kind of the emotional experience, if you like, to recognize the interaction. So what I'll ask clients with particularly young children is, how do you want your kids, or how do you imagine your kids thinking about and reflecting upon this co-parenting relationship or their childhood in general 20 years from now? Because right now, 5-year-old Sarah isn't going to say, oh yeah, my parents really, they were disrespectful towards each other and they had a dysfunctional co-parenting relationship that I'm going to have to unpack with a therapist over the course of the next 3 decades. Right? Like, children don't think like that. They're just like, well, this is normal. This is how mom and dad talk to each other. And then that ripple effect, before you know it, has affected birthdays, sporting events, graduations, weddings, maybe, before they're suddenly like, wow, yeah, that was unhealthy. And now I have to do the kind of work to play catch up and figure out everything that has occurred between the time that my parents split, a decision I didn't have any say in, and who I am as an adult now. So think about it as an investment in your children as well, a healthy co-parenting relationship or a professional co-parenting relationship.
That's really powerful. I I was already empty nester by the time I went through a divorce, so didn't have this co-parenting experience as, with minors, like children that were minors. But I do, even yet, will, see my adult children and think, did I communicate? Did I, raise them? How did I talk to them when they were children? Pardon me.
Mhm.
And if I would have had that glimpse of them as an adult when they were little, would I have made different decisions? Pardon me. Because I think it's important that we stop and project, like you say, think
Mhm.
of the future when you're in that situation. These children that you're talking over their heads, you're fighting over their heads, whatever it might be, they're
Mhm.
going to be adults one day. How do you want, just like you said, how do you want to remember them or want them to remember their childhood and look back? Like, would you speak that way if they were adults right now? Would you speak over their heads and around, like, would you be representing yourselves as parents that way if they were adults, which they will be one day?
Mhm.
And how are you talking to them? How are you uh, how impatient are you, or are you taking some of that out on them? And would you speak that way and act that way towards them if they were adults, which they will be someday, and they will have those memories. And so for me to, to be able to project that for parents and think of it this way, they might be little now, but this is affecting who they will become. It'll affect the relationships they have in the future. This is a very serious job that you have. And um,
Mhm.
through this process of dividing this relationship, how can you do it better? And with your guidance, it sounds like there's a far greater success for setting that up for the future.
Yeah, definitely. And kind of as I alluded to before, as long as people are willing to engage in that process and stay curious, there's hope. There really is. And I find that it's tough when you're in the middle of the swamp to see the bank on the other side. But as long as you're committed to moving forward, you're going to get there.
Yes. This is so good. So we will have your contact information in the show notes. So anybody who would like to reach out and talk to Justin and just have that conversation with him, see if you align, see if his level of meeting you with a bit of a quirky nature and not stuffy and just being himself and open to conversation. Check it, like, definitely. I encourage you to have a conversation with him. Justin, you also have a lot of background and knowledge around conflict resolution and managing trauma and that kind of thing too. So I feel like you bring that to the table as well for people.
I think that certainly helps to understand where people are coming from or why they're interacting the way that they are. I've certainly been through a lot myself and walked through that with a lot of people as well. So that's an angle that I can understand and relate to. So I think that's another layer that I kind of bring to the table with my clients.
Hmm. And that's really important because I feel like our culture in general is more receptive to exploring that and acknowledging it and realizing how it is affecting them now.
Mhm.
And like you say, finding those diamonds and working around that. And sometimes that can be something heavy that people have been carrying for a while, and maybe they feel it's in the past, but to help them understand that it's affecting them now as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. And not dwelling in the past and being able to look towards a brighter future is a big component of that too.
I love that.
Mhm.
If you could, I'm just completely putting you on the spot here.
Okay.
If you could say one thing to people, you had one thing you could share with the world, and it doesn't have to do with the mediation, with your work, but what would Justin want to tell people if he had one message to give the world?
I would say that when times are hard and in your darkest hour, you just need to find one glimmer of light. Just find one star in that dark sky, or one tiny light at the end of the tunnel, because things will get better. And you just need one reason to keep going and to keep pushing. And if you don't need that reason right now and you're doing well, there's always an opportunity to be that reason for somebody else that needs it.
Oh, that's good. That is really good. Thank you for sharing that, Justin. Thank you for spending time with us today. And I encourage people to reach out and have a conversation with you because I think there's a lot that you can offer them and guide them through whatever type of a challenge that they're facing right now. And mediation isn't just for people going through divorce, correct?
Correct.
What are some
Yeah,
other
I've certainly.
instances?
Sorry, I was going to say I've helped clients with, business interactions, disagreements about how they're running their new company, neighbors that are having a dispute over property lines, tree roots, kids that can't get along with their parents over something as well and want to discuss new responsibilities or things that they're hoping to do. Really, it's about providing that framework for that conversation. And then you sit back and you watch the magic happen.
And I've personally experienced it. That's where I first heard of mediation. And for me, it was a change in my relationship with my daughter following my divorce. And she initiated having mediation because we'd been very close. And so it's fast. That's just another application is when there's, like that was an adult child. It wasn't a younger where she was a younger person and a kid in our home anymore. But this was a relationship that was important to us. And so it can be used in a variety of ways. So I'm really pleased that you are there to help guide people, and I encourage them to reach out. And we will have you back on the show again, as well as on some panels and some future events that are coming up. So please
Cool.
watch for Justin in our community.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me, Deena. I really appreciate it. This has been fun, and I look forward to connecting with your audience again.
I hope you found that conversation insightful, encouraging, and also a reminder to all of us that what we see isn't always as it appears. People are going through a lot of things in their lives, and we would want that compassion shared to us, and that is something that we can offer to others without judgment. Instead, be curious and reach out, reach in, figure out a way that you can make someone's day a little better, and it might just start with a smile. I thank you very much for spending your time with me here today, and encourage you to please subscribe to the podcast, follow us on social media, check out our events. We have lots of ways that we can help you or someone that you love. Share this with a friend if there's someone that you know could benefit from this. And hey, keep smiling that beautiful smile, because the world really does need your sunshine. It means a lot that you spend this time with us and meet our experts and professionals who can help you through whatever life changes you're facing. Please refer to our terms of service available on our website, lifechangesmag.com. The link is in the show notes. Our disclaimer: Divorce Magazine Canada, Life Changes Magazine and channel, and divorce resource groups are intended to educate and provide quality, credible resource information. The contents should not be used as factual until consultation with the appropriate professionals for any guidance. Divorce Magazine Canada, Life Changes Magazine, and Life Changes channel, as well as the divorce resource groups, do not constitute endorsements for, nor liability for any claims made in the presenting of this information.